Good morning, fellow Ambazonians. Today na Wednesday, number 8 day for the month of June 2022. My name na Capo Daniel, the spokesperson of Ambazonian Liberation War. AKA Sense Pass King, una own countryman. Ambazonian Idan witness the biggest display for urban area in modern time of grassroots Ambazonian culture in Mankon. Shouting and commotion as an era of the fun and Guafo the Tet comes to an end. The women of the Ntakambungs in Mankon, they sat on the ground and mourned for their lost chief, their lost king. The king, the fun, as the Germans would call, royalty in the bloodline of Fon Mbangnize, the founder and the first fon of the Mankon kingdom. Some people will want us to call him the Fon. They should be reminded that the Fon itself, that name, is a German name that is pronounced in an Ambazonian fashion. Others will want us to call him Mbe. Some will want us to call him king or kingdom. The African man must know that our history that have been written by the colonizer, the slave masters, must be changed and written in our own words. What shall we call a kingdom, a state, or a people of such great culture, language, military strength? Are they not as the same as that which forms the United Kingdom? A kingdom that is also forged by the amalgamation of many sub-kingdoms or chiefdom, whatever you call it, or fons, von, as the Germans will call it. The British government asked us to call him His Royal Highness. That means he is from a royal blood and he is of highness. The Germans call us to call them von or von, as the Germans would have preferred. Today, all we call our own traditional leaders, our people must know that these are all names given to us by our colonizers and our slave masters. Perhaps the voice of Capo Daniel, your own countryman, will resonate amongst the kingmakers and the Ngumba houses across Ambazonia to know that the traditional title of our royal bloods and ruler of a unique indigenous people with specific languages must come from them. You must not call them a fon. You must not call them His Royal Highness. We have the power to call them what our tradition used to call them even before the coming of the Germans or before the coming of the British. We are who we are. We should be proud of who we are, and we should be empowered with our rightful power, knowing we have choices, because freedom is choice. Those who do not have choices but are born by the past of their slavery, are born by the past of bondage, are not free men. Free people must know that they have a choice. And it is my job as a voice calling from the Ambazonian Governing Council to tell our people that yes, you can. Yes, you have the power of names. You have the power to write your history. And every generation have the power and have a right to impact what will be defined in the future as the tradition. Why should we call our Mbes the traditional rulers? Are they ruling only the traditions? Are they ruling only the practices of the past? Or they are actually custodians of the rights of their people, custodians of their languages, custodians of their traditional boundaries? Do our kings, do our vons, do our mbe actually mean something? Today, we celebrate the coming in of a new era, a new king, a new fon, a new mbe in the great land of Mankon, a land that have been revered even by the British. The Mankon people, when the British Southern Cameroon was divided into two provinces, with one capital in Buea and another provincial capital to be in Bamenda. The British refused to send a commissioner in Bamenda because they cited they were afraid of the strength of the Mankon people. It will not be a surprise why the politics of divide and rule have always been played, even by the Prime Minister, John Gu Foncha, who always downplayed the Mankon people in favor of the Nkwen people as a politics to tamp down on the strength of the Grassfield people, to generate hatred, jealousy, and envy between the brothers of the Nkwen people, the Mankon people, the Mendankwe people, and all the Ngemba people, the heroes and the warriors of the grassland. Today, the Mankon people have risen up as a shining example of the culture of Ambazonia, of the grassland people, the hinterlands. We have seen the rising of our nation being held by the right hands of Mankon heroes like the Mancho BBC, who stood up and says that even the tear gases will cure Kata. We have seen the strength of the Mankon man, the leader of our war of liberation, Dr. Cho Lucas Ayaba, who have said we will not blink. We will walk with Changshu if that is what it takes to free our homeland. Yes, Ambazonia, the right hand of our nation, have risen up, and we must take pride in them, no matter where we come from, whether from Lebialem, whether from the land of the Bakwiri, the Bangwa. Ambazonian is one for all for one. The Mankon tradition, the Mankon practices, all our practices belongs to us all, and we must identify and take pride in them. All for one, one for all, as Mancho BBC would say. The grassfield culture and the many diverse culture we have in Ambazonia have been one of the things that La République du Cameroun, the recolonizer of our territory, have been trying to destroy. They have tried to neutralize our practices of tradition and our cultural expression by replacing the royalty, removing funds, removing kings of royal blood to put in impostors that seeks for money and power from their regime. The era of Fonangwafo, one of those who have risen in that like after having been stripped of all honor and dignity by dissolving the House of Chiefs in Buea. Fonangwafo and many of our chiefs, or fons, or kings, or royal highness were reduced to beggars, with Fonangwafo extending the hand to hold the hand of a woman, Shantabia, who is as young as his granddaughter, a woman whose legally civil married husband from neighboring Bafut was killed right before my own eyes. At that time, I was in EHS Mankon, where at night we heard convulsion and noise on the streets not far from the gate of my school. We went there in the morning, we saw blood, and we could only hear of the story that the husband of one woman who wants to be married by President Paul Biya was killed in cold blood, and his body was carried away by gendarmes. It was that wife, that symbol of barbarism, evil of La République, that Fonangwafo was made to shake hands with in front of cameras. Yes, Fonangwafo was reduced to a handshaker of a woman, not just any type of a woman whose husband, legally married, traditionally married to a Bafut man, was killed, his children taken into a tudi. Our fons, our kings, our chiefs were reduced into carrying the image, the statue of Mr. Paul Biya to march on 20th May, a day that was a shame to our people. Our so-called traditional rulers, our fons had been reduced to beggars. Fons and traditional rulers that were empowered by the Constitution in council of the British Southern Cameroons, that puts them as senators in their own house, where they deliberate, where they make laws and they advise the government of the former British Southern Cameroon on matters of governance, and they allocate to themselves their pay slips, their allowances, to be able to function with dignity and honor. They were stripped bare, their powers were taken away, Even the Germans, who were colonizers, brutal colonizers, people who enforced forced labor, gave our chiefs, our fonds, our kings the rights to collect tax. They were administrators of their land, of their territory, and the governors of their people. La République du Cameroon have reduced them into beggars, have reduced their blood, take away the bloodline, the royal bloodline, and put impostors in their place. The loss of Fonangwafo III, who at one point, we must recognize, in 2018, welcomed the Ambazonians and all his children who came to the palace and demanded that there should be an end to political participation and a withdrawal of all representatives of our land from the colonial houses of parliament, legislation, and all branches of government. Fonangwafo received the Ambazonian flag, which he still kept in his house till today. Fonangwafo refused to receive money that was brought to him by Baban Dampole. For over 2 years, he stayed in his palace and refused to attend any meeting with the colonial governor. We cannot ignore the fact that Fonangwafo had stood with his people before the coming of Ndiangote, the house nigger that finally came in and break the straw, and Fonangwafo blinked and shake hands with the colonizer. Even before Ndiangote left the Fon's palace that fateful Saturday evening, the Mankon village was attacked by the Cameroon terrorist forces. Livestock were slaughtered, dogs were killed, houses were burned, and 3 people were killed on that same day. That is the true face of La République du Cameroon, to make sure the people of Ambazonia know their place, third-class citizens. Fonangwafo might have saved his palace and the palace of the people of Mankon, but he did not protect his people and the village. The Mankon palace was protected, but the Mankon people were killed. Next door to Mankon in Bafut, the opposite was true. The Fon of Bafut refused to shake hands with the people who are killing his own people in the middle of a war. His palace was not protected. His palace was burned, ransacked, humiliated. War heritage sites in Bafut were looted, were destroyed and burned down by Cameroon occupation forces. But the people of Bafut were protected by their Fon and his blessing. That is how it's supposed to be. The palace is supposed to take the bullet for the people and protect the citizens, not the other way around. We congratulate the Mankon Palace and all the Ngumba, the king holders, who had received the delegation of all Ambazonian barracks in the great state of Mezam to have a face-to-face meeting, and it was agreed that no occupation forces, no chief terrorists, Lele Afrique, will be allowed to come into the plaza or the palace ground as we cry and mourn the missing of our king to install the new king. We were also, in exchange, to give a blind eye to some enablers who were allowed to sneak into Mankon and participate without any disturbance by our forces. They were given 3 days till Saturday to leave the village. All Mankon people from south to north, from the diaspora, have come home to celebrate and exhibit this beautiful Ambazonian culture. Nobody have been arrested. Our forces have joined into the celebration. There was no Cameroon terrorist military or occupation forces on the ground as the mourning draws to an end and as the coronation of our new Fon for Mankon II was installed. Video footages went up to upstation, and as we mock the colonial governor, he said he could not believe it and he will force his way into the palace plaza. Lele Afrique have to dispatch columns and columns of terrorist Cameroon forces to force himself into a ground where he was not invited. Lele Afrique came along with bodyguards, not to protect the people, but to protect himself, because the occasion was going on without any disturbances. The only protection and guns that were needed there was to protect the criminal and terrorist Lele Afrique. That is why he could not come and stay amongst the people without any protection, but our funds and dignitaries, including enablers who came in from Yaoundé were there without any protection, and nobody disturbed them because we are in our land. Lele Afrique is an alien, is a terrorist, is a criminal, and he will always walk with armored vehicles, with protection all around him until the day he will leave Ambazonia. He is a criminal, an uninvited guest. As the dust settled around the capital city of the Savannah State, Bamenda, and Mankon, the most populated city in Ambazonia, the heartbeat and capital of Ambazonian resistance against Cameroon rule, we can only hope for the best and pray that for Mankon II will take the examples of statesmen and people with dignity like the Fon in next door Bafut. A Fon is not made by the Gazette of La République du Cameroon. A Fon does not eat from the hands of foreigners. A true Fon, a true royal blood of the line of Fon Mbengnize would stand with his people, would be a father of all, would not participate in an alien government and system of colonizing his own people in the middle of a barbaric war being waged by the alien Cameroon government. We can only hope for the best and pray for the new Fon to have wisdom and courage to stand with his people and the aspiration of his people. With the background of the Fon being a teacher, somebody who cares for children, who nurture and sometimes have to discipline for correction purposes of students, somebody who did not abandon Bamenda into hiding but stayed amongst his people, somebody who had visited victims of Cameroon terrorism recently in the burning of houses along Bengui Road. We only pray for the best and we extend our support to the people of Mankon and the palace of Mankon for the right things to be done. Our allegiance is for our nation, our patriotism, and we will continue to uphold it as future events will dictate. We will continue to work with the 73 quarter heads in all the Mankon land. Those who are engaged in my office in particularly, I want to thank them for the wonderful collaboration we have had, and will continue to encourage all traditional leaders, all Ngumba heads, quarter heads who are not in touch with directly my office in particular, but in touch with the other governing council and other authorities to make sure they continue to engage and to liaise for an effective prosecution of the people's will. We want to remind all those who came into Mankon that they have up to Saturday. For those who are wanted or criminals who have been given amnesty to return back home to participate in this ceremony, they have up to Saturday to leave Ambazonia. Tomorrow we continue our war of resistance until Ambazonia is free and all of our funds are free. The condition that no terrorist Cameroon military will be around that area was deliberately breached by the colonial governor, Lele Afrique, expecting our soldiers to act recklessly, but we disciplined ourselves and we stayed calm to give our people a chance to exhibit this wonderful culture of ours, and we take pride in it. Lele Afrique will remain an uninvited guest. La République will remain an alien people in our land until we kick them out. We will continue to do just that. Capo Daniel, signing off.